There we go. I'm sorry that we started late, but unfortunately we had some technical issues. So I'm just gonna say to the recording that we had a little bit of technical issues. So we just started the event a few minutes ago, introducing the Energy Innovation Network as an organization that is hosting this event. And we introduced our distinguished speaker, Mr. Aurélien Cotet from Instant System, and Tram Vo from Mobi. So we just introduced the topic of mobility as a service. And now we are continuing with our second question of the day. Why is mobility as a service so important? And what are the mobility as a service positive impacts on mobility in metropolitan environments? So sorry, Tram, for interrupting. Please go ahead.
Not at all. Technology, we relied on it too much. And then when it goes wrong, we relied on it too much. Yes, MaaS is a goal that we are aiming from urban dwellers. As a commuter, I would like to be able, and it's not just me, research have shown that all the commuters want pretty much the same thing. They want a seamless, efficient, and integrated multimodal of transit for peak time, for example, 7 to 9 a.m. in the morning to go from home to work. For the user seamless, and they want to eliminate fiat, multiple user cards, or multiple apps for that matter, for different modes, and ability to personalize your preferences, ability to monetize your asset. For example, if you are a driver and you want to offer the extra seat in your car to go on your way to work, so you're not even going out of your way, how do you offer that extra seat in your car? You want to reduce the ownership fees, or even eliminate ownership of vehicles altogether, because the cost could be very high, from insurance to maintenance and parking. If you are in open area, parking is a premium. And then for providers, they are planning for the increased population in the cities. And how do they make it so that it's more attractive, so more user can use the options that they provide? As a provider, they want increased market size, and they might want to maximize their fleet efficiency. And overall, we want decrease in congestion on the roadways. For example, was it last year or 2 years ago? I think COVID made my brain a little bit blurry, but the city of Los Angeles released a report on congestion and traffic, and Los Angeles is known for congestion and traffic. But surprisingly, during commute time, they found out that a majority of the people in the vehicles are not actually going to or from work. They actually are out running errands. So if the city can find tools to manage that and incentivize people to not get in their car during congestion time, so that they can manage all that, that would be great. They want to also decrease greenhouse gas. How do they do that? And MaaS could reduce that and reduce accidents, reduce the need to have parking spaces designated in the city, and overall just maximize operation efficiencies, save time and money for all involved.
So Gina, you are mute.
I'm keeping this mute because I have some construction work in my background. So, but thank you, Tram. That was great. Aurélien, would you like to add something?
Yes, I would like to add something. It's what was interesting is when you think about mobility. Yes, the concept of MaaS is less than 10 years old. Why this concept came up? In fact, the first real MaaS concept came in the 80s when the people in the tourism industry tried to understand how we could manage the mobility of travelers when they were abroad, like a package. I'm buying the train or the flight, the hotel, but to go from these mobility hubs, either the train station or the airport, to the hotel. How do I do that? How do I manage to organize a tour for those tourists seamlessly? That was the concept 8 years ago. But the MaaS, as we are talking about, is definitely something that was that came up 10 years ago, mainly because suddenly we start having different options. 10 years ago, we had, or 15 years ago, we had mainly private cars, buses, train, tram, taxis, and suddenly Uber came in the countryside. I mean, in the sightseeing of everyone. Digitalization helped creating new mobility solutions. Suddenly, after Uber, we started to have bike and then e-scooters. And because suddenly you have so many different options that can be combined in one trip, the idea of MaaS was kind of created. Especially when you are a commuter. Do I always use the same commute, or my commute could change thanks to those mobility services? I give you an example. Many people used to take their car from A to B. You start to have some people who are now using their car for just a part of their journey, park it, and take a shared or public transport. So why is that? It's because now we have the information. Information, you know, just with a phone. So the digitalization make it happen. Nevertheless, it's not because digitalization is there, but we solve all our problems. Because MaaS, we are still at the beginning. If we think about that, how many real MaaS operations you have around the world? If you can name more than 2 or 3 real operations, I mean, not initiative, not project, I would know them, because the 100 of projects we have are project initiatives. And that's good because we are learning. It's very important also to understand that there are different kind of mobilities. You have the mobilities of a citizen who are basically are moving around their own territories. When they are traveling outside the territories is mainly for business or for tourism. So the number of mobility between big cities, or when I heard a lot about, oh, we need to have one application for the world. But the reality is the mobility is done mainly by people who are moving around their own territories. It's very rare, the number of people who really travel for business or for tourism. So that's one thing. So if we are talking about daily commute, it's interesting to see that the commute of the morning is never the same as the commute in the evening. The commute in the morning is mostly the same. You go from your home to work, or you can also go from your home to drop the kid and then go to work. In the US, we have a tendency, I'm not in the US right now, I'm in Paris, but I used to live in Atlanta for 5 years, and I used to do my sport in the morning. Why? It's because the swimming pool was open at 5 a.m. and I loved going to the swimming pool from 6 to 7 and then going to work. But my commute was nearly the same every morning. In the evening, my commute changed. Did I have to go back home straight away? Do I need to go to have some shopping? Did I want to go to the movie theater, meeting friends, etc., etc.? There, it's interesting to see that MaaS could be a good solution to find alternative from my commute in the morning, but also my commute in the evening. When we talk about commutes, most of the time people knows exactly what to do. They don't need a MaaS solution. But when there is an unexpected problem in the mobility I'm using, could be like, the bus I'm waiting, the engine broke, or the tire broke, or the train I'm taking suddenly is blocked in the middle of the railway, or what can I do if I have this kind of unexpected issue? here, MaaS would be an answer. What are my alternative to my daily commute that I know so well when suddenly this one is not working?
Yes,
I know I'm talking a lot.
that's great. That's we need to first of all warm up the audience, and then I think it's always important to remind why we are chasing the dream of a mobility as a service, mobility in metropolitan areas. So it's very important. So to continue our conversation, okay, MaaS, it's clearly very important. It has a lot of positive impacts. But as you said, Aurélien, there are very few examples yet in real life. So there are challenges attached to that. So my next question for you guys is like, what are the challenges that you think are important to talk about encountered by mobility as a service in real metropolitan environments? So Tram, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think probably the most important thing to make MaaS into a solution is the ability to integrate and utilize the information that is required to enable a MaaS solution. The current MaaS solutions that we have, whether it's public, city-owned, for example, or is private, like Google, Uber, Waze, I think the problem with that is that they all relied on a centralized operator. So when that happens, the integration cost is really high for individual providers. And then when you want to retain user privacy, data controllability, and the fair business practice, it's not really possible for the providers. And due to this reason, I don't think centralized MaaS platforms are scalable. Again, a year ago, I would remember looking at Google. If I want to go from point A to point B, I noticed that you can hail a ride from both Uber and Lyft. This year, I noticed actually Uber is no longer on the Google platform, only Lyft. And it's probably because the cost is too high for Uber, and they don't need to be on Google anymore. They have their own they have their own business models that is successful for them. So they don't need to rely on Google users anymore. So I do think that the solution has to be decentralized with standards that is accepted by the industry, so that we all can speak the same language. Right now, there's not a lot of standards out there on this. Mobi is currently working on a solution using many of the standards that are published. Many of them are really relatively new, like decentralized identifiers and verified credentials. Those are and zero knowledge proof. Those are W3C standards for self-sovereign identities. Along with those, we also use other standards for data sharing, including the Mobi Trusted Trip standard, which is to us is the foundation for pay-per-use mobility. What the standard does is it links a self-sovereign identity with a location in time and place. We call that ubiety. Is an old word, but we love that word. Ubiety is at any moment in time where is something in a location. So when you can link a decentralized identity with its location in time and place and allowed it to be verified throughout the whole trip, then you can be able to start doing pay-per-use mobility and be able to preserve providers and user data privacy at the same time.
All right. Well, thank you, Tram. Aureliano, would you like to add some other challenges and limitations to mobility as a service? So we're now trying to like frame what this mobility as a service limitations and challenges are. So then we can see how can we solve those. So Aurelian, please.
I think there are two main, or we can say three main problems. The first is commercial. Is when you have different mobility service providers, public and private, they are silos. They are used to be silos, and it's very difficult for them to think that they could be complementary. They always think that the other one will try to steal the time and the money of their users. But at the end of the day, if you really step back, you're going to figure out that most of the time they are the same users. Or some users are going to be more private and some users are going to be more public. But at the end of the day, the problem of who is owning the user is an issue. And no one should be own the user. The user should be the one choosing. When we talk about mobility, it's always a tricky topic. Why? It's because everybody agrees that the public transport is the backbone of the MaaS, at least for the local MaaS that help commuting people, the commuters to commute every day. Because the MaaS need a MaaS, MaaS system to transport as many people as possible, to decongestion the roads. Problem is, most of the public transport around the world is subsidized. So there is a huge problem of trust and understanding of the public transport authority and how we can share this subsidized mobility with a private environment. And the private, they don't want to share a lot of things with the public. So it's a commercial problem, and beyond, we can say it's a trust problem. Because if you integrate your own service to a third party, how are you going to communicate to your end user if you don't have access to him or her directly? And that's very important to know, to put in place the right rules where everyone can play and where everyone is a winner. And when I'm saying this is because the only way to see it is mobility is a right. So when I heard about, it has to be B2C, business to customer, I say, yes, it has to be B2C, business to citizen. Because at the end of the day, if you ask a private MaaS to operate, their goal is going to be to make money. And it's perfectly normal for a private company to make money. But if you are unemployed, are you going to be able to use this MaaS solution? Because most of the service you're going to be able to choose are just going to be the public transport? Or, I mean, or if you're a reduced mobility person, most of the private MaaS operator, I'm sorry to say that they don't care. In fact, it's a burden to have this kind of people. And it shouldn't be a burden. It should be embraced because mobility, it's a right for everyone. And I think I'm speaking with my heart because I spent 4 years at Transdev, one of the biggest public transport operator. And the mission of a public transport operator is to help everyone, whoever is the person. The second one is also technology. Not everyone is at the level maturity of a digitalization of their services to be fully integrated for a seamless experience for the end user. So that's why I still think we are still on test and learn. It's because not all the mobility services are eager to be integrated in a third party. Like Uber, look, Uber. The only place they decided to be fully integrated, that means the payment is not done through Uber application, it's SNCF, the train rail operators in France. But I'm not sure that Uber will do that a second time. So if Uber on all those big actors doesn't want to be integrated in a third party, why should should be the one who will have the right to integrate everyone. And I do agree with Tram. It has to be in a way decentralized. So any kind of MaaS can operate, public or private. And at the end of the day, it's going to be the end user. There is another point I would like to point out is that has nothing to do with this straight away, but it's linked. We talk about commuters. Commuters are people who are traveling from their place to work. Employers have a huge responsibility in the mobility of the overhaul on the daily commute of everyone, outside the logistic of the goods on Amazon packages everywhere in the world that can add the congestion in the cities. But yes, employers going to be a part of it. And at one moment or another, let's face it, even micro-mobility should have to be subsidized if we want to create a real synergy intermodal between public and private modes.
Okay, well, thank you for listing all these important aspects. Yeah, so talking about decentralization, what is blockchain for the audience? And so this is the first question, and I would start with Tram, and then we can talk about how blockchain could improve or solve these challenges that we talked about that are encountered by mobility as a service. So please, Tram, start with the definition of what is blockchain, and then we can move ahead.
Okay. Yes, blockchain as a definition, let's see, in 2 sentences, is a system of recording information that is tamper evident. So think of it as a digital ledger of transactions that is duplicate and distributed across the entire network. And the computer, all of the computers are on the blockchain. And I think, let me see if I can give a really quick, simple example. For example, there's a network of 200 libraries. And those 200 libraries all have the same copy of a book. In the US, all the students have heard of To Kill a Mockingbird. You've heard of that book. And if you go into one library and you ripped out a page, let's say page 10, and I rip it out and I want to put in another page and tape it in, the other 199 copies will have evidence that this book has been tampered with. So that's a library example, but essentially it's just a system of recording information that one block is linked to the previous block, and is tamper evident overall because every node in the system has the same information. So you can't tamper with one without showing that the rest of them, it looks different.
That's very clear. So then, said that, we can start to talk about like how blockchain could improve or solve the challenges that we described before that are encountered by mobility as a service. So Aurelian, do you want to start?
Yeah, I would like to start. It's what is very interesting is when I was at Transdev, a lot of people who came to see us for blockchain were talking about. Sorry, someone was just next to me because I'm at a conference and making some noise. When I was working at Transdev, I had many companies were specialized in blockchain because that was a very trendy word at that time. And the only thing they had to tell me is like, oh, we can prevent you from fraud. We have this great thing that is, and they had crypto money in their minds. And I think that's where the problem is blockchain is not necessarily crypto. And it's important also to make sure that everyone knows that crypto money is something that can use blockchain, but blockchain is not crypto money. So because the first question they ask is say, okay, the fraud. Okay, let's talk about that. So if I have like in Paris, 1 million people who are buying their pass, monthly pass, on a Monday morning when they start the month, how long it will take for each of these individuals to pay and get the confirmation that the pass is reloaded. If you think about that, if you really take the blockchain as they were thinking, you can't wait 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or 30 minutes to get your approval for buying your things. That does, I mean, better queuing at the machine, it's going to take less time. So for me, I want to really to make the difference that for me, blockchain in MaaS has nothing to do with preventing the frauds or to buy a ticket. Completely stupid. No, for me, the blockchain is mainly there when in the future we're going to need also a lot of information about people, but with anonymous data. Right now, I'm talking on different think tank about how to use the blockchain to calculate your carbon footprint during your daily commute, because in the future you may have a carbon budget and we will need to follow you in a way without following you, but to make sure that you didn't you use less than your carbon budget, or you have to pay if you you consume above this budget. It's going to be the same also for companies. Companies will have to include the commute on the travel of the employee in their carbon footprint. And one of the example is consulting firm. You take a big company like IBM, where a lot of their employees are traveling to their clients. So their carbon footprint is enormous, but the carbon footprint of IBM, it's now basically the real estate they own or the rent, but is nearly nothing compared with the carbon released by their employee traveling to see their clients. Blockchain will be a great asset to track everyone without giving too many details, but to be able to calculate it.
So Trump, do you wanna add anything on what Aurélien just said?
I agree. I think earlier on, when we start working in blockchain and start going down the rabbit hole, as you know, we are an industry consortium. We started out because most of the people that wanted to take part in MOBI, they tend to come together because they are the R&D geeks. They see the potential of blockchain. But when we first had conferences, MOBI conferences, we call them colloquiums, and we couldn't even mention the word crypto because everybody just don't want to hear the word crypto, and they do associate blockchain with that. But I agree that crypto is just a use case for blockchain, just like email is a use case for the internet. Blockchain, as I mentioned, is a system of recording information that is tamper evident, and it can use as a trust anchor so that you can be able to communicate with each other, to be able to not share all your PII, for example.
Yes, this is very important that we insist on the understanding what blockchain is, that is not crypto, but it can actually be applied and be very useful for many technologies, such as mobility as a service. So right now, what are the current pilots or application of blockchain to mobility as a service. So maybe, Trump, do you want to continue with perhaps what Mobi is doing, and also if you want to introduce Mobi a little bit more into details.
Yes. So blockchain, in my opinion, is not a technology that can solve everything. It's not a lone technology. Blockchain alone cannot solve the MaaS problem. We at Mobi truly believe that the convergence of all these new but fast maturing technologies such as AI, IoT, blockchain, 5G, 6G, all these convergence together will be able to give any connected entity, and by entity, I meant people, businesses, vehicles, infrastructure, even a set of data, all entities that are connected, all these technology together can give them a trusted, decentralized identity and give them the ability to communicate and autonomously transact with another connected entity. To do that, then you can start opening up so many things. As I mentioned earlier, Mobi Trusted Trip is built on that, and to be able to do pay-per-use mobility. And that's what MaaS is pay-per-use mobility. And it is encouraging, actually, in the last few years to see that government around the world are requesting for proposal in MaaS using blockchain. We have seen a few of them now in the last year or so in the US, and a few of them in Europe on MaaS. Recently, Mobi received a award by the Transit Idea Program, which is a part of the Transit Cooperative Research Program and sponsored by the Federal Transit Administration to use not just blockchain, but blockchain and decentralized identifiers, verified credentials, zero knowledge proof, and multi-party secure computing to be able to implement MaaS for multiple providers and users. And we are in the process of testing our theory out right now with transit agency. So we're very excited. The pilot is to demonstrate a complete multimodal trip or multiple trips using to be able to give the user a seamless way to plan to purchase ticket and to pay. This time, the only component of blockchain is to ensure that these sovereign identities can securely communicate and transact with each other. I don't think blockchain is mature enough to be able to handle massive amount of data. So all that data handling has to be off-chain. And then the on-chain part is only to manage decentralized identities.
Okay, thank you so much. That was really great. Aurelian, would you like to add something? Yeah.
It's true that like MaaS, blockchain in MaaS is newer than just MaaS, because we talk about MaaS for 10 years, but using blockchain in MaaS, even if before it was to prevent the fraud 4 years ago, now it's definitely to try to create a trustful environment that is decentralized, to make sure that every competitor can work in the same environment without the fear of the other. That's was one of the questions of Elliot that had to leave, was okay, two e-scooter doesn't want to be in the same MaaS platform because they're afraid that they would have to reveal their competitive advantage. It's true, but at the end of the day, if you look at, I mean, most of my friends in Paris do have all the application of all the e-scooter providers. On this, like Uber or Lyft, you always look at which one is the who is the cheapest. at the end of the day, the reality is that the end user look at what is the cheapest for him or her. But to come back about that, there is a difference also between big cities where you have many actors, many competitors with the same mobility service, compared with medium cities where you will have one e-scooter, one e-bike, one car sharing companies. There, the lack of trust is not an, I mean, could be an issue, but can be easily fixed. When it's when you have multiple actors that that's where you can find an issue on where blockchain could be an answer. After that, I think you said something very true, Tram, is there is a difference between the real-time blockchain versus the blockchain that can be, gather the data, process it, and then release the results to use the results to make an action. To give you an example, when I was talking about footprint carbon, you don't need to know at the minute how many CO2 grams you spent. It can be done a month later. You can aggregate everything, be treated decentralizedly speaking, and then send the results. For me, I still have some hard time, and maybe because I'm not a huge specific expert of blockchain, is how to use real-time blockchain. Because of the lack of, I always think that calculation in blockchain can take a lot of time when you have many people using it at the same time. I still remember the first time I bought my first Bitcoin. In fact, it wasn't one Bitcoin, it was 0.01 Bitcoin at the time. I got the, yes, it's mine, like 15 or 20 minutes later, and it was supposed to be real time. But that's, come back to the crypto. Blockchain, I think also it's interesting to know that real-time data, what is important is real-time data, it's important for the collectivity to understand where is the offer and where is the demand, where is the concession, and how you can create or propose the right services to each individual according to the person characteristic and preference, according to the real-time traffic, mobility traffic flow. And that's, I think, where blockchain could be an interesting real-time usage, is where is the demand, from where to where, what is the offer, and how to repackage and reharmonize like an orchestra to make sure that the music is beautiful to hear wherever you are seated, front row or back row. It has to be the best for everyone. And anonymously speaking, that was one thing that people attacked Los Angeles with MDS. They said, oh, it's not that anonymous because I can tell you who took this trip. I don't know how they managed to do that, but with all the information you have on the internet, if you want to know who is behind a trip, you can. Maybe blockchain would be the good alternative to make sure that we wouldn't know, but the information will be there to be useful for the community at home.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Aurélien. So we have some questions from the audience now. Someone says, how is blockchain perceived by public transit agencies and private mobility operators as a means to share their services in an integrated way? And then we have someone else asking a similar question, which is one of the limitations of getting competing private services providers to both be available on a single MaaS platform is their lack of trust that their IP and other competitive advantages could be leaked to their competitor. They don't trust the MaaS platforms And they fear even if the MaaS platform is independent, it might get acquired by the competitor in the future. Can blockchain help address this barrier? So we have, how is blockchain perceived by public transit agencies, and then on the private side also?
Can I take a crack at that real quick? So the grant that we receive, or the award, is a very small award. It's a seed kind of money, is to essentially educate the public agencies in the US of what blockchain can do. I do agree that centralized platform is the problem. As I mentioned earlier, Google is one of them, and you don't see a lot of mobility providers on Google for that reason. Business practices, business models can be exposed. So the solution we're working on, just imagine Kayak. I think many of you know Kayak, and Google Map together, but make it decentralized. so we are trying to be able to incorporate 3 different mobility network: the street network, which includes cars, Ubers, scooters, auto micromobility. That's the street network. And then there's a light rail network, and then there's a heavy rail network. And if you are in the US, in the tri-state area, for example, I can see that you can live outside in New Jersey, take your car to the train station, park it there, take the train into Manhattan, and then from the train station in Manhattan, taking the subway to your work. And that could be a normal commute, or just going to the museum or something. And how do you overlay all those 3 networks and be able to give use the end user, me, let's say 4 options that seem to be popular: the fastest route, the cheapest route, the greenest route, which is most commuter, certain age group, millennials are very interested in, the greenest route, and then the route with the least number of transfer, for example, because they don't want to have to keep getting off the bus or the subway to get onto another one. So if you can give them those 4 choices, they can pick, and if you can do it autonomously, then the city can use the data to be able to analyze the traffic using zero knowledge proof. A lot of time, agency, one of the biggest hurdle that they have is that they are convinced by companies like IBM, for example, to purchase a ton of data, and then they can't afford to hire data scientists to be able to analyze the data. So if you can offer them a zero knowledge proof example of how to manage the data and be able to analyze it, even road usage charge, if there's 100 cars on the road and they want to collect tolls from those 100 cars, they don't need to know who's driving the car or which car is on the road. They just need to know that my money is good and that they can collect my money. And that's all they need to know. And that's what we're trying to solve using blockchain, AI, IoT. Everything has to have a trusted identity because, as you know, over 65% of the internet is controlled by bots, and 45% of that is malicious. So the first thing to be able to do these kind of transaction autonomously, you have to be able to have a trusted identity. And then from there, you can do transaction.
Thank you, Tran.
I really like what you said is education. And that's a huge issue is for a lot of public transport authority, at least the people who are at the executive level still think that MaaS or blockchain is free in a way. How many times they told me, oh, it's just an application, you can download it, so it should be free, it shouldn't cost anything. Educating people to understand it's very important, especially in the public sector. Why? Is because most of those people do have so many different topics but they're not an expert on each topic, and they just rely on the title they can pick on the press. So it's very important to educate people, especially because public transport, most of the time, they run their things locally. So they don't necessarily do understand why they should use blockchain. Because for them, things works perfectly as it is. So why adding something that has a cost to something they don't understand? And that's where I think education is very important. When we talk about MaaS, people didn't realize how important was standardization. Standardization can bring trust. And the first country in Europe that decided to really work on that is the Netherlands. When the Netherlands 2-3 years ago decided to release 7 tenders with different characteristics of for MaaS, like Amsterdam for a busy capital, Rotterdam for the airport. One was on the border, on doing cross-border options, meaning people who were living not in Netherlands but working in Netherlands, but still using transportation that was crossing the border. How does it work, etc., etc. And the way the Netherlands tackle it is definitely by trying to say, okay, we need to make sure that everyone has the same language. And they created what we call TOMP, T-O-M-P. And I'm sure that Edwin, that is connected here, that is one of the specialists of TOMP for the Netherlands government, can talk about it. Standardization, for me, it's linked with blockchain, because as soon as everything is standardized, you can put in place trusted blockchain system. And for that, education to explain why and how, it's very important. And I think blockchain in transport for dummies would be a nice book to read.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Aurelian and Frama. So we are 5 minutes away from the end of this panel. We have some other question. Maybe we can squeeze like a very, very short answer to this one. What's the panel's takes on using tokenized payment settlement for solving the challenges of integrating service providers? So if you want to give both of you like a very brief answer, and then we just call the panel.
Yes. I do believe in tokenized payment. However, it has to be a stable token. There's no way that you can pay for MaaS using Bitcoin, for example, for the same reason Orlando was mentioning, is it has to be stable. It has to be, if I put in $1, I know that my dollar is still $1 5 minutes later, a year later.
I do agree on don't get me wrong. When you think about tokenization, I always think about what London put in place, where at the end of the day, when you use TfL transport for London, you can use your own credit card, but it's a token in a way. It's a physical one linked to you, and you tap in, tap out. And the way it's working is you can use it during the day. And if you use it more than the daily rate, you're not going to be charged for the number of time you tap in, tap out. You're going to charge for exactly what you use according to the fair rate. It's true, it's an internal tokenization used where you can use your credit card. And your credit card could be physical or on Apple Pay or Google Pay, and it's working perfectly. So I think before trying to disrupt completely the banking credit card scheme with a new money of mobility, that I don't believe in it, because as you said, $1 is $1 and €1 is €1. And when you want to travel with a difference of currency, is the fact that the way of living in one country is not the same as in the other country. It's going to be very difficult to find the right mobility currency for the world. So I still believe in the money we have, at least for the public transport, for the MaaS, either if it's public or private. And the tokenization, I think the banking systems still do have something very strong, but it's very difficult to crack.
Well, thank you very much, both of you, Aurelian Cotet and Trambo. That was fantastic. I love the conversation. I think we should bring this conversation in many, many more other situations to, again, like educate about this topic that I think it's very important. So I'm gonna call the panel right now. We are 2 minutes away, but maybe we can get ready for the next call of the day. Who's still in the working time. So thank you so much. It was beautiful, and I wish you a great evening for you, Aurelian, and day for you, Tram.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate. And thank you again for the invitation, Virginia. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.